Is Tim Haynes. I was born and raised in Port Hope. I'm 60 years old plus. I was born in 1953 and lived most of my life at 12 Cavan Street, at least the first 20 years of my life. I grew up downtown and knew most of the places downtown in the late 50s and early 1960s. Cavan Street was the place was home, and my dad's store was on Cavan Street. I remember his store being the first store he had was the building that it's actually it was where the parking lot is for the Thai restaurant behind it on Cavan Street. And back in those days, there was a building and he rented it from Dr. Vivian, who was a local veterinarian. There was a vacant lot just to the south of it that we played in as kids, and then there was on the corner there was an office building. Dr. Beatty, the dentist, had an office in there. There was an alleyway that ran in between Dad's store and 10 Cavan Street. We lived at 12 Cavan Street, and that back alley was the back entrance into the hardware store, which was Al White's hardware store, now Gilmer's, but that's where it was when I was a kid. And the back alley was where they measured all the fences and the stuff, and it was sort of we went in the back way. The post office, the guide office was just really almost in our backyard. It was on the main street, but all the paper boys used to hang out at around the alley, the alleyway, waiting for the papers to come out. The newsprint was right there in the basement of whatever number is in Walton Street where the guide office was. They ran the paper there. The printing presses were there. I can remember going up and watching the guys type out the plates to run the newspaper.
Now you say your dad was basically in business. What kind of business was he in?
My dad was a shoe repairman, and that was his main business. And during the winter, he sold skates and sharpened skates, and so he knew all the kids, loved all the kids.
Excuse me.
He was a character.
He got involved later with hockey and baseball in Port Hope. And
he was a charter member actually of the Beaver Athletic. He coached many years with kids. He also coached softball, girls softball. Not too many people know that and remember that, but I do. He also played softball until he was 52 in the men's mercantile league. And any time that he was going to start pitching, he'd take me out on Cavan Street at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd warm him up on Cavan Street. Many times chasing the ball down over the hill, or down behind Russ Lowe's and almost down to the Ganaraska. So
you say that he played ball. Whereabouts did they play ball in town?
Well, they played down at the beach. Now the parking lot for Cameco.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite a vital league. There was games every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and some nights there was double hitters. So it was quite involved back in those days.
So eventually, Tim, your dad moved to the main street.
1969, my dad came to the conclusion that shoe repair was not going to last too much longer. So he had an opportunity to buy Hank's Variety on Walton Street, and so that was his store until it was 1969 he bought it. I remember that very well because I had just turned 16 years old, and I got to drive a car to go to high school only because I had to be back to work by 4 o'clock. There was only 3 people that worked in that store. It was him and I and my mother, and the store was open 13 hours a day. So. But it was a sort of an institution. It was a place where everybody gathered, and it was a great time.
There was a barbershop in that store too, was there?
There was for many years. That shop actually, back when I was a kid, was it was always a smoke shop, and when I was a little guy, it was owned by Jack Mitchell, was referred to as Mitchell's. And at that point in time, Freddie Webb was the barber in the back there. I remember going to get my hair cut there, complaining that I could never get a brush cut. My mother would never allow me to. But the store changed hands a few times. It became Mitchell sold it to, I believe it was Jim and Irene Burks. It was Burks for a number of years. Then it became Jim's music store, always selling tobacco, always selling that kind of stuff. Then what happened to it after that? It became, Jim gave it up, sold it to a fellow by the name of Tony. I don't remember what Tony's last name was. And finally Dad ended up with it in 1969. So Dad ran it till I think 1984, and then he gave it to my brother. My brother ran it for a couple of years and then sold it. So, but it remained Hank's Variety until just recently.
Yeah. So you've seen a lot of changes throughout the town within the last few years, right?
I can go up and down the street. You know, I remember when the right now it's Doug Mann's office. At that time, when I was a kid, it was Canada Permanent. Table Talk, or what's it now? What's the new restaurant there in the corner? That was Hutchings IGA. The PUC was on the main street. I can still remember the early morning that the St. Lawrence Hotel was on fire. Stood out on the corner street and watched the flames come out the windows. It was rather sad, but I do remember the St. Lawrence Hotel in operation. If you go down the street, we're talking O'Neill's. I just happened to have Zip Mark in my office just about 2 hours ago. The O'Neill's had a menswear. There was what other? The jewelry store was what was it? Who was it?
Churchley's.
Churchley's. That's right, Churchley's. I can remember when the parking lot at the liquor store was Western Tire before it was torn down and rebuilt, and the Sears store, I think it was the Sears store, went in there until the flood took it out in '81. So I've seen a lot of changes, yeah.
So right now you're in business for yourself, right, Tim?
That's right.
Yeah. So when did you basically start your business?
This rendition of it I started in 1999. I spent 12 years of the first 12 years of my career in a partnership, but I worked out of the Coburg office of a local accounting firm, Langhorne and Lynch. I left there and went to work in Whitby, working for an engineering company. And I went to Toronto, worked for a construction company for a while, and then came back and started a practice of my own. So since 1999, I've been located here.
So how do you find conducting business in Port Hope now compared to what your dad did?
Well, that's a loaded question because I really don't. I don't. I actually, because I was out of town for so long, I really don't have a lot of local businesses as my clients. I'm here because I've lived here all my life. We raised our family here, and I have an office here, but I don't do a lot of business in Port Hope.
What business in town do you really think stands out in your mind throughout the years?
Oh man, that's a tough one. You know, Cameco or Eldorado has always been a quality community company, regardless of the stuff that we have to put up with, the crap, the issues that we're dealing with. But it's always been a stand-up company. As far as the small businesses, I love the fact that, say for instance, Dieter Becker started his business literally in the basement of the guide office in that little alleyway I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
he started there, and how I know Dieter was my dad and Dieter struck up a friendship because they would go out in the backyard and have a smoke together. And Dieter and his family built a wonderful business, Acme Electric, but it all started winding electrical motors in that little basement shop that he had. So those are great stories. I guess Grant Wakely's operation would be another one that is sort of not rags to riches, but I do remember when the original Grant Wakely business was Kenny Lee's, and Kenny Lee's business was on Cavan Street, just down the street from us. And I think Kenny had 2 trucks and maybe 3, I don't know, a little bit of a storage and a couple old trailers and a couple tractors, and but that business has been wound up into a very successful business. So those are a couple that I can think of off the top of my head.